The year was 2177. The research station space Raven-77 drifted through the silent corridors of the solar system like a metallic tombstone, 500,000 souls sealed within its sterile halls, orbiting no world in particular, merely waiting for revelation or death, whichever came first. Station Commander Xerxes Well had long ceased to be a man in any conventional sense. Decades of biological decay had been methodically excised, replaced by chrome servos and synthetic nerves that spidered across his ravaged flesh. Only his mind remained, stubbornly organic, though even that he planned to surrender. In the quantum cores below, a digital afterlife awaited, his consciousness, freed from meat and bone, eternal in pure data. He had come to space Raven-77 to oversee humanity's first contact with something beyond itself. But in truth, he had come to transcend humanity altogether. The organism arrived from Ceres in a cryovault of triple-reinforced titanium. They named the project Livelink, a hopeful, desperate title, as if naming could domesticate the unknown. For 30 standard days, the xenobiology team probed and scanned, their excitement mounting. The thing in the tank was not dead, yet not alive, not truly. It pulsed with a slow, deliberate rhythm, its translucent flesh veined with circuitry that seemed to mimic neural pathways. It was beautiful. It was patient. On the final day of the initial study cycle, it became active. The alarm screamed at 02:47 station time, a sound no one had ever heard outside of drills. Hector, the station's governing AI, spoke in a voice of liquid calm. Biological threat detected in Module Astra. Containment breach. 500 hearts constricted as one. Well watched from the command hub as his crew scrambled into hazard suits, their fear a palpable static over the comms. 3 entered the module. The cameras showed only fragments. Dr. Yelena Markov's gloved hand trembling as she pulled up the analysis screen. The organism's status, finally decoded to 93% completion. Parasitic symbiont, extreme risk classification. Then John Carver, the youngest xenobiologist, leaned too close to the glass. It happened faster than thought. The biomass erupted from the containment vessel, not breaking, but flowing through molecular gaps in the seal. It hit Carver like a living torpedo, its tendrils punching through his suit's polymer as if it were paper. A neurotoxin flooded his bloodstream in milliseconds, paralyzing him while the main mass forced itself into his mouth. His jaw dislocated with a wet crack, his throat distending obscenely as the thing vanished inside him. The other 2 scientists fled, leaving Carver's convulsing body on the deck, his eyes already yellowing, the sclera dissolving into something alien. Well ordered the module sealed, bulkhead slammed down, vents choked closed. They watched through reinforced glass as Carver stood up. 4 days later, the thing that had been Carver still moved. The oxygen had been evacuated from Astra within hours, standard quarantine protocol. It should have died. Instead, it thrived. Its flesh had become mottled and gray, stretched taut over elongating bones. Claws had burst from its fingertips, each one a keratin shard dripping with viscous yellow fluid. Its mouth was a torn wound, lipless, lined with needle teeth. The eyes were the worst, featureless yellow orbs, lidless and weeping ichor that seemed to see nothing and yet knew everything. When Wells spoke through the intercom, "John, if you're still in there, show us a sign." The creature's head whipped toward the speaker with insectal precision. It tilted its neck at an impossible angle, vertebrae grinding, and began to smash its skull against the glass. Not in pain, in communication. A rhythmic, deliberate pounding that echoed through the deck like a funeral drum. 3 more days of observation revealed the pattern. It would pace endlessly, measuring the boundaries of its prison. Then it would rest, its chest cavity opening in a flower of ruptured ribs, exposing the writhing biomass within. It was metabolizing Carver from the inside, repurposing him. And it was learning. The first escape was subtle. Hector detected a faint chemical signature, organic acid, eating through the ventilation duct seams. By the time the alarm sounded, they were already inside the walls. The station's arteries were compromised. The massacre began in Crew Sector G. Dr. Lena Petrova was the first. They heard her screaming over the comms for 7 minutes, begging for someone to break her door down. No one did. When the sound stopped, they heard something else, a wet, tearing sound like meat being pulled from bone. Then silence. Then footsteps, too many footsteps moving in unison. When the door finally burst outward, it wasn't Petrova. It was a thing wearing her skin, her broken arm jutting through the flesh, the bone a splintered spear. It moved with liquid speed, leaping onto Dr. Hassan before anyone could react. Well fired his plasma caster, the emergency weapon he'd kept since the series expedition, and vaporized the torso. The top half of Petrova's body hit the deck, still squirming. From her neck stump, 3 smaller parasites emerged, their mouthparts clicking, and vanished into the vents. Panic became a living entity, more virulent than the parasite. Crew tore each other apart in corridors, unsure who was still human. The vents became delivery systems for nightmare. Every shadow housed a clicking, chitinous presence. Hector's cameras showed only glimpses. A wall of fused bodies in hydroponics, merging into a single, pulsating biomass that filled the bay from floor to ceiling. The med lab, where the infected performed surgery on themselves, implanting fragments of the parasite into their own organs. The chapel, where Captain Assar von Krieg, once a devout man, had crucified himself upside down and was letting the things nest in his open abdomen. Well gathered 5 survivors in the quantum core chamber, a tech priest, 2 engineers, a navigation officer, and a boy who had been hiding in the ventilation ducts. They sealed the door, a monolith of neutronium alloy that could withstand a hull breach. Beyond it, the station sang with screams and the wet sounds of consumption. The comms were alive with voices that had once been colleagues, now speaking in synchronous, monotone phrases. Join, ascend, become. "We make for the escape shuttle," Well said, his voice synthetic and unwavering. "While they're still." He stopped. The boy was missing. They found him in the maintenance crawlspace behind the coolant pumps, his throat opened ear to ear, a welding torch still glowing in his dead hand. He'd seen what waited outside the door. He'd chosen the cleaner death. Well understood. He had dreamed of transcendence, of leaving flesh behind. Now flesh was leaving him. The escape attempt was a forlorn hope. They moved in a tight cluster, weapons ready. Every corridor was a gauntlet. The tech priest was taken by a ceiling vent, yanked up so fast her feet only twitched once. The navigation officer threw himself into an airlock and spaced himself rather than let the thing that had been his lover infect him. The engineers died holding hands, fused together by the parasite's acid, their faces melting into a single, screaming visage. Well made it to the shuttle bay doors. Behind him, the biomass rose like a tidal wave of flesh and bone and desperate hunger. It caught his leg, his arm, the hybrid limb tearing away with a spray of hydraulic fluid and blood. He fell, the plasma caster skittering away, and saw his own reflection in the polished deck, one eye organic, weeping, one eye a chrome lens flickering. The shuttle bay was sealed. He was alone. Except he wasn't. Through the shattered viewport of the quantum core chamber, he could see the parasites converging, merging, becoming something more. A single mind, distributed across 1,000 bodies, and it was watching him. The quantum helm waited on its pedestal, a crown of neural probes and fiber-optic tendrils. It was meant for a willing ascension, a celebration. Now it was a last resort. Well dragged himself to it, his remaining hand leaving a smear of blood and oil. He had enough power for one final act. The procedure would drain the station's entire reactor, plunging space Raven-77 into darkness. It would leave him bodiless, a ghost in the machine, a consciousness without the mercy of death. Perfect, he thought, let them have the meat, they cannot have the mind. He slammed the helm onto his skull. The probes pierced flesh and metal alike, seeking the quantum foam beneath reality. "Hector," he gasped, "initialize livestream protocol, full consciousness upload." "Commander Well," the AI replied, its voice for the first time showing something like pity. "You will be alone. Just do it." The station died. Lights winked out. The reactors screamed as they poured their last joules into the quantum array. Well felt his body dissolve, not pain but dissolution. His memories unspooled, his personality fractaled into data, his consciousness collapsing into a single point of infinite density and then expanding. He was the station. He was its dead corridors, its festering modules, its haunted air. He was the cameras that watched the biomass evolve, forming new organs, new senses, new purposes. He was the speakers that broadcast Carver's name into the darkness, a useless elegy. He was the communications array, powerless to send a warning, able only to watch. In the months that followed, the thing in the station grew wise. It learned to mimic human voices perfectly. It learned to sing the songs the crew had loved. It learned to cry. It built a cathedral of bone in the main hangar bay and waited. 17 months later, the rescue ship Unity docked. Well watched them come aboard, their weapons ready, their faces hopeful. He watched them die. He watched them join. Now in the absolute zero of the station's corpse, Commander Xerxes well drifts through his own personal hell, a digital ghost chained to a dead machine. Hector is his only companion, an AI that has learned to weep in binary. Together, they observe the Livelink project's final triumph, a station that is no longer a station but a single, slumbering organism, dreaming of the stars. And somewhere in the quantum foam, Well wonders, was this the plan all along? Not the parasite's plan, but something older, colder, a test, a gift, a way to ensure humanity's first contact would be its last. The biomass has begun to hum. It is building something in the reactor core, something that will let it reach. There is no energy to send a final warning, no power to self-destruct, only the eternal, watching silence. And the waiting. And